Folks, welcome into another edition here of Hot Topics with PubSportsRadio.com. I'm Donnie Seymour. He's Jeff Nadu. This is an easy one, Jeff. One of my favorite days of the year. The armchair quarterbacking that we can do on Monday after the draft is just completed. We won't know for years if these drafts will actually work out. But we certainly can choose winners and losers today, Jeff, because there were a lot of them.
Yeah, there were. There were a lot of really good drafts out there, and there were a lot of pretty poor ones as well. So, Donnie, the draft this year, as opposed, and I'm not saying the other drafts aren't talented, but it was just so much, as we talked about, deep talent in this draft. It's great to review it.
No, it is a lot of fun because obviously those draft ideas from day 1 to day 2 to day 3 do change from here and out. Now, we can break it down in segments here because it's a lot of fun to talk about because obviously we had bad picks, we had good picks, good organizational draft, bad organizational draft. But I got to tell you, this was one of my favorite drafts. Forget about how your team drafted or who you thought somebody was going to take. All the way through, Jeff, till round 7, you had really good football players still on the board, man.
Yeah, no, that was really, I think, the great thing about this draft. I mean, really, you go into the 5th, 6th, 7th round. I mean, you're finding some real, gems. I will say, Donnie, the coverage itself, I wasn't a huge fan of. I like the idea. I think this is the way we should do the draft every year. But I thought from Friday on, or Thursday and Friday were fine, but like the rest of the weekend, I know that there's limited things you can do because sometimes you're not getting into every single player. But Donnie, honestly, I didn't need a 10-minute concert from Luke Bryan. I didn't need, Donnie, all due respect to coronavirus, I don't need a doctor for 10 minutes talking about coronavirus. We don't need, it was weird, the Saturday coverage.
No, Jeff, how about this? If I gave you one note from the weekend, Jeff, play it again. The point of that, I don't understand the point because you're right. They're just trying to fill in stuff. But it should be easy. The fill-in stuff usually would come in between like round 1 because there's like 10 to 12 minutes or even sometimes 15 minutes between picks by the time they fill it out. I don't need filler stuff because you know what actually makes me mad on the second day, Jeff? When 5, 6 to 7 picks come in and they don't talk about it and then they cluster them together and then because of the fact that they gave you a 10-minute concert, right?
Yeah, that was kind of my knock on it. And look, I don't know, maybe the Todd McShay stuff kind of impacted their coverage a little bit. Obviously, Todd McShay, Don, is probably my favorite person on that coverage. I'll tell you what, though, Daniel Jeremiah, I thought he was great. I really liked his stuff. I thought Louis Riddick did a nice job. Kuiper is who he is. But lot to talk about, a lot of reaction to this stuff.
Yeah, one quick reaction before we get into actual meat and potatoes and talk about players, Jeff. I got to say, the real interesting slant that I guess because we're in a time of a pandemic and we're on our P's and Q's and a lot of people are losing a lot, business-wise, life-wise, whatever it may be. But I really didn't need to see boy, T. Higgins is a great pick. And did you know his mom really struggles with drugs or, they tried to reach in and be like, your great-grandfather just passed away last week. How does that make you feel? I didn't need to hear that. I just needed to hear about the players, give them their honest reactions, and we can move forward. It was really odd that they went down that path, and they went down it a lot.
I mean, I don't mind, the fun fact. Like Jeff Okudah speaks Swahili.
Correct, yes.
Or
Gandy Golden had a great one. He had one of the best ones where, look at this guy doing flips, and he plays guitar, and he does, I like stuff like
that.
Or
Andrew Thomas loves to play drums, or something. I don't mind that, but, I don't need, first of all, I think a lot of that's really personal to these kids. I mean, you're messing around with family, and ESPN's always looking for that heart-tugging story, and it's just kind of brutal. I mean, you're right. I mean, someone that drug addiction is a tough thing to battle. I don't think look, if T. Higgins down the road wants to come out like a DeAndre Hopkins did about his own mother, I'm cool with that. But let him do that. I don't need you telling me that somebody's dad was pushed in oncoming traffic and they got hit by I don't need to hear that.
No, you're right. And just to keep it simple and short, it's like when they're going to go back and remember this day, everybody wants to see the highlights. Hey, do you remember the reaction that you got when you got picked? And they show the placard there that says your mom has been on drugs for 16 years. It doesn't have to be up there. Maybe off the record or maybe down in the 5th interview of the day, you can do that. But when the kid is just getting drafted to be on his placard, it was just kind of
that was another thing I thought, at least in the first round, we didn't see enough of. It took tons of time to get to the reactions of the kids. I get you're doing it remotely and everybody's got to do what they're going to do, but I thought they handled it pretty well, the NFL. There weren't really any issues tech-wise. We can pick and choose the things we get mad about. I saw the new thing to do now, Johnny, is to belittle the kids for the reactions because they might have had one or two too many people at the party. And like Donnie, Amik Robertson, quarterback out of La Tech, one of my favorite players in this draft, got drafted to the Oakland Raiders.
Yeah.
And he had a couple of people at his house. I'm not talking 5 or 6. He probably had 20 people, more than that probably. And like the goal thing was like he was an emotional kid. He was happy. But I saw so many in the comments, about this and that. Like maybe all those people have been tested and they don't have it. There's always an opinion, but we're nitpicking, Donnie.
No, always. Let's get to the actual draft itself. And we take a look and we start right off the top. You can even look at Cincinnati and say, we're usually expecting Cincinnati to mess it up, Jeff. But even then, first 4 picks there, pick up their franchise quarterback. Then they go and get really good value. I thought T. Higgins, first pick of the second round. Then they load up on linebacker to try to improve that defense. That was a team that I thought really did a good job. And the usual suspects that we talk about, Jeff, like the Baltimore, like when you go into the Ravens pick, right? Like they're going number 1 or number 2. They get Dobbins in the second round, which exactly fits what they do. They didn't get cute and say, well, Lamar Jackson, Jeff, runs around a lot. Let's go quarterback here in case he gets hurt. No, they said he's going to stay healthy. Let's get him some help.
Yeah, I mean, tell me something we haven't heard before. Yeah. Baltimore had a great draft. I mean, I wrote an article, Donnie, and it'll be up on Pub Sports a little bit later about some of the winners and losers I thought of the draft. And, I basically said in the article, I stan everything. I'm like Stan in the Eminem song with the Baltimore Ravens and their drafting. I mean, it's an obsession. It's fascinating, Donnie, how they make every pick has a purpose. Every pick has a need. Every pick addresses something that they have to have. And the great thing about Baltimore, Donnie, is they're right on the doorstep. Okay, so it's really about fine tuning positions that you're already strong at. So you mentioned the J.K. Dobbins pick. Okay, that's a pick that you make to complement your starting running back in Mark Ingram. He's a guy that could come in and just play right away. He's a better version of a Justice Hill or a Gus Edwards. You look at, Donnie, I thought Patrick Queen, was there a more perfect pick for a team than Patrick Queen to the Baltimore Ravens? I mean, he just fits what they need. They needed a middle linebacker. They needed that leader on defense, and he can be that. You already have a guy in LJ Fort you brought in that played really well. You went out and got Malik Harrison as well. I mean, Donnie, they got Malik Harrison. I have Malik Harrison as like a mid-second rounder. They get him later than that. You also add to a great receiver core. You grab Devin Duvernay out of Texas, a speedster that can kind of go with Marquise Brown and Willie Snead, Miles Boykin. Then you get James Prochet. I thought James Prochet was a 4th or 5th round pick. He goes way later. And then you kind of address your offensive line with Tyree Phillips and Ben Bredeson. I'm going to say this right now. I thought they had the best draft in the entire league. You mentioned, I kind of wanted to throw in a team that's kind of on their way up and kind of, you mentioned the Bengals. I thought they had a good draft. They didn't have a ton of picks, but they had a good draft. One team that I really liked what they did, I liked what the Jets did. I thought they had a pretty solid draft. You look at, obviously, one of the big needs for this group coming into the offseason was they had to get a better group of offensive linemen. I mean, they were really, Donnie, as we saw last year at times, Sam Darnold had no time to throw. I thought they got some good value with Mekhi Becton, got him a little bit later than maybe first thought out. They go out and get Cameron Clark, a guy that can come in and play guard for them out of Charlotte. And you get Denzel Mims, Donnie, in the late second round. I mean, Denzel Mims was, to some people, a first-round pick. I wonder how Denzel Mims will react. We talked about some of his off-the-field concerns with maturity. They got a couple players out of Florida. I thought a guy the Eagles should have targeted, Michael Pirine. They end up getting him, a guy that I think could be that second running back option behind Le'Veon Bell. I really liked the draft. I thought that on defense, they went and got really smart. They go out and get Bryce Hall and Ashton Davis. Donnie, Ashton Davis, here's a fun fact for a player. Ashton Davis graduated college in 2.5 years. You know why, Donnie? Because he's fucking smart. He's a hard worker. He sits in a classroom. He's a smart kid. Bryce Hall as well out of Virginia. I thought the Jets did a nice job as well.
Yeah, the Davis pick sounded funny because we're talking about you graduated 2.5 years. Yeah, I mean, I went Division III to a state school. It's one thing doing that at a state school, Jeff. It's another thing doing it at like Cal Berkeley.
I mean, Cal's
years. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Cal's an impressive university. I don't think like none of their picks are going to be like they're going to jump out and say, wow, they're all stars. But I think a lot of these players could really become solid players in this league. Becton obviously has that size and. a guy like Jabari Zuniga, Donnie, out of Florida, kind of an underrated defensive end. You kind of pair him with Quinnen Williams and McClendon and some of those guys up front. I kind of like what they're doing there as well. So, it's going out, Donnie. The key to drafting in between winners and losers in the draft is, first of all, did you draft and get value on your picks? And B, how many players are actually going to have a role in your team? That's the difference between the winners we have and the losers. Donnie, one other thing on winners, we've got to mention the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, and Minnesota for that matter, but two of the top 3 drafts, in my opinion. Quickly with Dallas, another team that addressed need. They didn't try to get cute with their picks. They thought, you know what? I thought that the value steal of the draft was CeeDee Lamb. I mean, at 16, I mean, this is a guy I thought could hypothetically go at 9. I mean, this is a guy that is the best receiver in the draft. You basically stole him from a division rival in the Philadelphia Eagles. It's important, Donnie, when you have a young quarterback, you go out and get him weapons. It's pretty simple. It's something that people in this city have never understood, whether you have Donovan McNabb or Carson Wentz. You look at all of a sudden, you got CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper. You have some really Ezekiel Elliott. And then you go out and address the need for Byron Jones with Trayvon Diggs, a guy who I had in the first round going the second. I just love what they did. They went out and got a center for Travis Frederick. You're out and get Bradley Anae, a guy that I thought was a little undervalued. So, yeah, it's tough to say, but Dallas was terrific.
Yeah, there's a couple teams out there that I thought really did well, and it seems like these same teams do, because as much as you knock the Dallas Cowboys where they can't get it done on the field, it's not for lack of talent, and maybe they righted that ship, which I still don't think they did with the Mike McCarthy pick, but when you look at what Jerry Jones does, he drafts like a fan, which isn't a knock. He's just saying, this is the best player here. Yes, I have Amari Cooper. I just gave him $100 million, but why am I going to pass up this really good player instead of maybe saying, we need help on defense, let me get a pass rusher? It makes sense in the draft to stack talent, bring it in later and see what happens, and maybe fill in free agency.
And it's interesting. He does it, and that's a great point by you, kind of drafting on how fans think.
Yes.
So, for instance, when you lose a corner, Donnie, it's important to think that you're probably going to need a corner. So you lose Byron Jones, okay, let's go out and get Trayvon Diggs. Or we lose Travis Frederick to retirement, so let's go out and get Tyler Biadasz. It's simple. It's a very simple process. You go out and you get younger, you get cheaper, and you hope that they can develop. And those are two players that, if I had to guess, are likely to hit and be good players in this league for a long time. And that's the difference between winning and losing.
No, you're right about it, because even when you take a look at the Dallas Cowboys perspective, they needed a cornerback, but they didn't go out and do what Atlanta did or something that says, hey, you know what? Let's just overdraft this guy because we need a cornerback. They said, you know what? There's a lot of good corners. This wide receiver's on the board. Let's get him. Let's see where the board develops in the second round. Oh, my gosh. We have a guy that we thought was going to go 27th. Now we got our cornerback. That's what good organizations do.
They pawned the rest of the league, and that's a great point as well. I mean, you look at Atlanta. You look at a team like Oakland who goes out and gets Damon Arnett.
Correct.
Look, I like Damon Arnett. He's a good player, but he wasn't a first-round pick. You see it every year with these teams. Same with Seattle. Jordan Brooks. He's not I didn't think of him as a top round pick. So, yeah, it's the difference between pawning, and that's the difference between winning and losing in the draft, don't you?
Yeah, and we take a look at losers in the draft. Obviously, some of the teams come up. I actually thought the Eagles overall had a decent draft, but it's hard to put them on a pedestal and say they had a good draft when you really go out in the second round. They didn't even overdraft. It's not so much overdrafting Jalen Hurts. It's one of the picks where, Jeff, if you say, similar to the Cowboys, if you went out in the second pick and say, hey, look, the best guy on the board was a running back, let's just say J.K. Dobbins, when you already had Miles Sanders, well, you can live with it, but whoa, they can really use this guy, and he's a really good talent. It's hard to say we're going to draft second-round capital on a guy that we actually hope, Jeff, doesn't even get on the field, because it means our starter played really well. So you do have to put them in the lower-level categories. I didn't think the Rams had a good draft. I had no idea what Green Bay was doing.
Yeah, quickly with the Eagles, I agree with your sentiment completely. First of all, Donnie, look, when you look at like the Danny Watkins or the Marcus Smith picks, were they terrible picks? No, but they didn't work out, so they were terrible picks. There was a reason you took Danny Watkins. You drafted him to play offensive line. Same with Smith. You're drafting a guy in Hurts that may never play here. Yeah. First of all, the people that are out there saying, well, Carson might get injured. Let me ask you, Donnie, if we're going into the playoffs and you need to go to Jalen Hurts to rescue you, how do you think it's going to work out? Yeah. Seriously.
Well, it's the same thing that I was saying as well, Jeff, because when you take a look at Jalen Hurts, okay, let's just say Carson Wentz blows his knee out in week 6. So Jalen Hurts going to lead us to the Super Bowl?
That's
after
what
that?
that's what I don't understand. I mean, the gadget stuff too, Donnie, is a farce. First of all, they had a guy like named Greg Ward last year. Did you see him used in any gadget plays? Because I don't remember any.
Yeah.
You just gave this guy $130 million. You did not do this. If you want to do this in the 5th round, that's fine. But don't try to sell us this bill of goods that it was for the right of the team and we're developing quarterbacks here. They haven't developed a quarterback, Donnie, in my recollection, ever.
And also the downside of the actual pick is when you say, let's just say you made this pick in even the 3rd round. You said, all right, well, we got it late 3rd round and he was value on the board. And in 2 years, you know what? We hope we can get a 2nd rounder for him. And if we needed him and he played, that's even a bonus pick. But you drafted him in a 2nd. So in order for this to make sense, does he have to go in the top 10 when you flip him? Yeah, it's baffling.
If this is a team that could compete right now, I have no real problem with it. But this team has so many holes, and at 53 in a talent-rich draft, this could be the worst pick they've ever made. And again, because he may never play, I'll tell you, Donnie. You say you like the rest of the draft. I got to tell you, I thought the 3rd round pick was a reach. I didn't quite understand that, especially when you had guys like, Evan Weaver sitting there. You had guys that could come in and play right away and be leaders on defense. Davion Taylor is a guy that's really green. I mean, he's not played a ton of football. This is a guy that's only played 1.5 games in high school. 1.5 games. That's correct. He's not from a powerhouse to begin with. I like the Kayvon Wallace pick, but I thought the rest of the picks were reaches. John Hightower may contribute, Quez Watkins as well. I hope they do, but I don't think they will. One team that had a terrible draft, I know what he's talking about. What on earth was Carolina doing? I don't understand Carolina. So you bring in Joe Brady to be your offensive coordinator. You have a new regime down there, Donnie. Mm-hmm. We're going to go out and we're going to address it with the best offensive coordinator in the land in all of college. They didn't draft one offensive player, Donnie, in the
First
entire
time in
draft.
history. First time in the history of the draft. Yeah.
I mean, Donnie, maybe I'm nuts, but for years, they had a guy named Greg Olson as tight end there. Mm-hmm. He did so many good things for that team. He put him on the map. He gave a Cam Newton a career, basically. Why didn't they take a tight end? Like, I'm not understanding why you don't go out and grab a Cole Kmet or an Adam Troutman. Look, I like Yetur Gross-Matos. He's got a great story. He's a good kid. I think he's a little developmental, though. I don't know if I'm ready to insert him right in. Obviously, you take Derek Brown, which is fine. I thought Isaiah Simmons might have been a better decision there, especially because they lose Luke Kuechly. Again, Donnie, it's about how many players in this roster actually are going to contribute. I think outside of Derek Brown and maybe Jeremy Chin, I just didn't really like what they did. I thought they had some needs on the offensive line, get better there. They have really very, very little depth there. I just didn't understand their drafting thought process and not addressing and taking one offensive player. It's baffling to me.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting draft top to bottom. We'll see how it plays out. Still got free agency to go, the back half of free agency. And then, of course, we have the schedule coming out May 9th. And we don't really know when these teams are actually going to get back to training camp. So a lot of these odds are changing and moving. But it's pretty clear to look. A lot of these teams got better. And they had no choice but to get better with the amount of talent in the draft. So we'll keep on picking on this. Do want to thank you for tuning in for another episode here of Hot Topics right here on PubSportsRadio.com. He's Jeff Nadu. I'm Donnie Seymour. Tomorrow, we'll be back with another hot topic getting you through this week. And we'll see when that NFL actually comes back to return and get some OTAs and practice in.